No way.
Way. Oh, hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
How are you?
Bill had just said no way, and then he went live, so you got to see me saying way.
Swing.
Yeah, we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the show, and then Bill does that to me. A little notice next time, please, or you'll be hearing from my lawyers, my good man.
We went live right away because you were talking about what you're working on. You went into the studio this morning, and
I did.
You spent hours and hours recording.
5.
Mm-hmm.
Even I was surprised.
Tell us.
No, there's a story. We're going to call this Requiem for an Apostate, and it's going to be about a BYU professor getting fired and then X'd from the church. The only thing is, it's not right now. It is 30 years ago. The professor's name is David P. Wright, who left BYU and then, after getting fired from BYU, landed on his feet and within a couple of years had a position as an assistant professor at Brandeis University, where he made his claim to fame and where he continued to teach and where he's an emeritus professor now, though I don't know that he teaches regularly anymore. But through the grace of God directing his prophet, Spencer Kimball, to tell all the members to journal everything that happens to them, that's what David Wright did. He journaled it all. And I don't know if he would have done it anyway. He might have. But I'm just thankful that he did, because he leaves a complete account, first person, as to what happened to him during these fateful days from 1993 to 1994. It's basically mid-1993 or so to mid-1994 when he finally gets excommunicated from the church. He'd already been fired as a professor from BYU in 1989. But now that's not enough. He does publish a certain paper, which tends to be probably the reason. There's actually 2 papers in question, but the one that ends up being the reason he gets excommunicated is, it was in a new approach to the Book of Mormon. I think it was in the volume from 1993 when it was published, and our friend Brent Metcalf was the editor. Brent Lee Metcalf was the editor of that. And so that ended up getting our friend in hot water. The main premise of it, by the way, the premise of the paper was comparing the Book of Mormon with the Epistle to the Hebrews and finding dependencies that really shouldn't be there if the Book of Mormon is what it claims to be, having been written by Jewish people thousands of years ago on the American continent, whether they had come from Jerusalem, or, but it fits a lot better if Joseph Smith or somebody contemporary wrote the Book of Mormon, somebody who had access to the Epistle to the Hebrews, for example.
Yeah, this relates to what the work you just did. I mean, you just created some content where you point to Joseph Smith using on 6 occasions the data points from Josephus.
Yes.
And it's so widespread. Again, 6 may not seem like a lot to an apologist, but to those of us outside the church who are thinking rationally, whether you're an ex-Mormon or somebody who just wrestles with religions and knows a lot about Mormonism, but the way that you think about these things is different. And 6 connections to the book of Josephus, and you even acknowledge in the podcast that 1 or 2 of them is pretty weak. But when you put all 6 together, it is clear to the rational thinker that Joseph Smith is clearly using Josephus.
It does appear that some of the connections to me are really remarkably direct. They're not in the Bible. And of course, from the apologist's point of view, that is the beauty of it. How could Joseph Smith have known? Well, unfortunately, because those same stories, though not in the Bible, are in sources such as Josephus and the Adam Clark Bible Commentary that we know were available to Joseph Smith. And in the case of Josephus, we know that he was familiar with its contents, at least to some degree, as were Oliver Cowdery, the second elder in the church.
Yeah, and as you're pointing out too, there's other ways in which evidence can be seen as having should have been there, or you're borrowing from things you shouldn't be. And your episode sounds like it's going to touch on that same sort of direction.
I'm actually not going to go into the details of it at all. I asked the question. This is all the drama of what unfolded. I introduced David Wright to the audience because they don't know who he is necessarily. I mean, he's not one of the September 6th. He's actually a 7th. It's just that his got delayed because of other circumstances. And he's over on the East Coast. He finally gets excommunicated in the middle of 1994, although it had started, the process had started, I think, was it February of 1993? It may have been earlier in 1993 than I recalled. But this is a story that needs to not be forgotten. And I think that even though it's rather lengthy, it's very detailed, it's very well written. I don't know if it's as well spoken or performed by yours truly, but I do know that if I sound hoarse at all now, it's from the 5 hours of recording I did this morning.
Yeah. Anyone tries to hold this thing accountable, and it makes it extremely difficult. And so whether you're a professor at a school, whether you're a 70 who left and wants to tell your truth, whether you're someone like Marlon Jensen or Richard Bushman trying to have an open and honest conversation, but only can go so far, the system makes it really difficult for anybody on the inside to shine a light on it in an honest, authentic way that makes it accountable for what it does.
Yes, and David Wright does a wonderful job explaining that and expressing things from different points of view. This is very much a journal in which he records not only facts, but his thoughts about the facts, and also letters going back and forth between his bishop. It was Bishop Reeder and the stake president, whose name was Wheeler. It was Reeder and Wheeler. And it also includes letters that he wrote to one or both of them, and also letters from his wife, Diane. And honestly, Diane steals the show with the writing. I would probably have written something. I flatter myself that I would have written something more like David P. Wright, okay? Because it comes very much from the head, right? But his wife, who's also similarly educated in Bible studies, hers is very articulate as well, but there's more heart in it. And it just really, it struck me when I read it. And then I had not read this in a long time, by the way. I didn't want to read this entire thing and then do it again to perform it. I wanted to give it a more of a cold read. And hopefully you won't know that as much because I'll be spending, hours and hours editing out all my mistakes tomorrow, so it'll be smoother. But I said that to the camera without having read ahead. And when I got to the part where the stake president or the bishop is relaying a message that they appreciated all the letters, but they thought that his wives was the most powerful. It was interesting that even they saw it. But all to no avail, of course. He was excommunicated. And I think he's much happier now.
So folks you're hoping to have that out for, say, 6 or 7 o'clock tomorrow night?
Yes, it's only 5 hours. So the problem with watching it live is you can't speed it up, right? You can't slow it down either, but you can't speed it up. Maybe you can slow it down. I've never tried, actually. But so I'm going to be there. It should be a lot of fun. It is a riveting tale. And just because it's long doesn't mean it's not worth listening to in all its respects. All of it's laid out there like a legal case. And even though you can see what's coming, every twist and turn along the way is fascinating.
That sounds like a phenomenal story to tell. And there's no better storyteller than Radio Free Mormons. So be on the lookout for that. And so tomorrow night's show of Radio Free Mormon sounds like a really good one. And that's saying a lot. So,
well, thank you very much. Tim Burton is excited. He says 5 hours. Yay, give me more, says Tim.
Yeah, well, there you go. Talking about things here, I wanted to just show a couple of things, and then we'll open up the phone lines.
Woohoo!
Here's the picture. So this is going to be next Wednesday's Mormonism Live, and it's an episode on the predatory techniques of Joseph Smith. So we'll clearly lay out what the modern world considers child grooming techniques. And then we'll go into the life of Joseph Smith and see how many we can find that match with that, categorizing them in the same way that modern folks do. And it had me thinking, I was working on this episode here for a couple of weeks, and you just made the Michael Jackson noise, woohoo, right?
Was that me? Yeah,
that was you.
That was my attempt.
That was you.
I think I hurt myself.
I was watching a Michael Jackson documentary a couple days ago, and it was gross. It was Leaving Neverland Part 2. And so there was a Part 1 that was done at the time when all of this went down. And then there was a Part 2 that came out recently, and it's a documentary style. And it sits down with the victims and gives them a chance to talk and tell their story. And the thing that stuck out to me about the life of Michael Jackson is that very early on in his interactions when he's in private spaces with children, he's being accused of being a child abuser. People are coming forward in that day and raising claims that he touched their children, and they're trying to pursue legal action, and he gets it all quieted down. He's got lots of money, he gets lawyers to work on that, and they make it disappear. You either pay victims off or you have something, whatever, you know the gig. And what stood out to me is that Michael Jackson kept, after that, putting himself into a public or a private space with a child and then getting accused again, and then putting himself in a public space with or a private space with a child and getting accused of it again. And it struck me, if I'm innocent, I'm not a child molester. If I was ever accused of molesting a kid, I would never put myself in any private setting with a child ever again, because I'm innocent and I'm never going to deal with that nonsense again. The only people who keep putting themselves into private spaces with children after being accused and after being accused and after being accused of being inappropriate with children is a child predator. And the way that they're able to do it is by what's he saying, Bill? Rich people don't have the same thought patterns we do. Yeah, I'm not talking about rich people. I'm talking about just child molesters. And it struck me that Joseph Smith, one of the things that you can say about him is that after he's accused, he continues to put himself into private spaces with children where inappropriate things are being alleged. And he distances himself from the allegations, but then he goes right back to putting himself in those spaces again. And it strikes me that there's something more to that than just a man of God doing the Lord's will. Anyway, I thought we could open the phone lines, and I thought it would be interesting, and we'll see how this goes. But there are a lot of things about Joseph Smith's life that I think are really gross. Things where he was deceptive or dishonest. And I wondered if we could have a little fun tonight and folks could call in. And I don't mean fun as in funny, but I mean soothing to the soul, to get off your chest some of the things that stuck out to you. And I think there's so many of them. I think there's certain ones that people would pick out right away and say, but maybe the more obscure sort of remind us of some history that maybe we haven't thought of in a while, and things that Joseph Smith has done, but things that he's done that are gross. And so if you want to come into the show and share a story, share a thought about a historical data point, do that. And you can also leave it in the comments too. And we'll give a few phone calls to that and see where that goes. And before we get to that, we've got Matthew down below. Any thoughts from you, RFM?
No, you've said things really, really well. Set the stage nicely, I think, Bill.
All right. So Matthew, how are you?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Matthew, you're blinding me in your mirror.
Oh, I'm
Where are
so
you in the
sorry.
temple? Is that a ceiling room you're in?
No, it's the divine aura of you two. It's just overwhelming my space.
No wonder Moses put a veil over his face. He couldn't see. It was bumping into rocks coming down off the mountain.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't.
Can you look up in the air? Can you look up in the air and just say something like, "I saw a pillar of light"?
Oh, a pillar of light behind me.
There you
descended upon
That's
me.
not bad. I think the mustache kills it though.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Give him a few years. He can tell it better.
Yeah, I'm only 28. Okay, I still have another little Joseph Smith lifetime to fill out my stories. Okay.
There you go.
Let me evolve the theology a little bit.
What's on your mind tonight, Matthew?
No, a perfect tie into what you were talking about. Going off of like the grossness of some of the things of Joseph Smith. So one thing that I've recently been looking a lot into is floodlit and just like modern Mormon sexual abuse. And it just really intrigued me because I have a kid and I have a still believing active wife. And so it's just something that I really wanted to get educated on. And now all of this is just back of the napkin math, right? None of these numbers actually really mean too much, but out of all the total reports from the Catholic Church versus the Mormon Church, we stack up worse per member when it comes to sexual abuse. And growing up, when that whole scandal broke of the Catholic Church and they're abusing kids, I was like, oh yeah, no brainer. It's because they're the church of the devil. They're not the right church. Of course, they're going to be
They
rampant
need
with
to let
sexual
those
abuse.
priests marry and have normal sexual relations.
Well, I just think it's crazy that that was like a testimony to me, like, oh yeah, I'm in the right church. Of course the Catholic Church is corrupt. And now that I'm older and I've left, it's like, oh, my church is worse. Or that church was, the numbers are, especially for how small we are, for our numbers to come even close to the Catholic Church. They're in the billions, we're in the millions. Like, the fact that our numbers, at least reported, are higher is crazy. So,
And you mean percentage wise, right?
yeah, I don't actually believe any of these just because it's so hard when it comes to actual reports of sexual abuse.
Yeah. I think percentage wise, I've heard that that's correct.
Yeah, it's
Actual numbers would probably still be
2.13%.
very different.
Yeah, it's 2.13% of the membership of the Catholic Church versus 2.33%. And that's being the most generous I possibly could be to the Catholic Church. So I guess my big question is, right, because I mean, the whole church is founded on, in my opinion, a sexual predator. But I really struggle to this day, especially when it comes to learning more about Joseph Smith and these gross things and these modern day things that really bug me too. I've been told it gets better, right? I'm pretty sure I've watched an Almost Awakened from Bill Reel where he's like, oh, it gets better. And I just find myself, it gets worse. I'm about 2 years into my faith deconstruction, approaching the 3rd year. And I just find myself getting angrier and angrier and more frustrated. And I don't want to come on here and necessarily vent. You guys are my therapists, but it's almost at a point where it's, I guess, is that why people step away? And in your opinion, how do you actually make that transition? Or how did either of you make the transition from, I'm just very upset and disturbed and angry at all of this, to not? Because both of you come across as very not bothered.
What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, first off, let me tell you I'm bothered. I agree with you. I think the modern moment bothers me more than the past, because they've had plenty of time to fix it, and they've had a light shined on it, and they've had books written about it. They've had their flaws pointed out to them. And whereas past leaders could run away by just leaving the state, current leaders are stuck with the histories that are out there about them and those under them and the things that have happened before this moment. And they could have fixed it, and they don't. And so every time I see the thing with the SEC, I'm angry. And I'm angry that the people on the inside don't speak up. There are voices on the inside who know that the first presidency acted in ways that were not anything like what that calling requires to be able to have the spirit and to operate. And those men, they don't speak up. Those women, they don't say a word. They support it by their silence. And I'm pissed that this thing lies and cheats all the time about everything. In fact, anything you're like, that doesn't seem right, you can just about bet they've lied about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I also have friends who said, let's burn it down. And I said, man, that's a lot of life energy to put into something where when you take your last breath, its heart will still be beating. You don't have a hope of burning it down. So for you to waste your life energy wanting to burn it down, so find ways to help people, find ways to connect with others, find ways to use that to tap into your creative energy and make something that's beautiful, that makes meaning to the world. Go out and help somebody, go serve somewhere, go write a poem or sing a song. But there's better ways to do this than to be angry at it because it doesn't deserve your life's energy wasted on it. It took enough.
Wow. Very nice. Very nice.
Okay. Well,
Here's
thank
what
you.
I was going to say. Okay, ready for mine? It's not crass or anything, but it's nowhere near as good as Bill's. I stopped working out regularly like I should to a year ago last October. So it's been over a year and a half, and I put on extra weight, and it's really bothering me. So I have started to diet, trying to be more sensible, trying to get a little exercise in, and I've been doing this for about a month now. And I'm really frustrated that I'm not losing weight faster than I think I should be with all this crap I'm going through. And then a voice comes to me and says, you know, you took over a year and a half to get in the shape you're in. You shouldn't expect to get out of that shape, that bad shape, in a month. That's really not realistic. And I'm just going to suggest that as long as 2 years sounds to you, and it is a long time, that it's just going to take as long as it takes. And it might be unrealistic to think that you'll be able to get away from it as fast as you would like to, even though fast in 2 years may sound horrible to you right now.
Oh, well, I appreciate the thoughts. And I just thought I'd pick your brains because it's definitely something I think a lot of people struggle with. But I just am surprised that, it doesn't really go away. It's like more fuel's added to the flame. It feels like every month. So
will you do me a favor? Next time you're sitting there and you're feeling it, you sort of notice it, right? Because you've got a story about it. Let the story just sit off to the side for a minute. You can have the story back when this experience is over, but just set the story off to the side for a minute and just feel the discomfort. Just feel what that feels like. Anger, sadness, whatever, gloom, and just feel it. And see where that connects to, maybe besides the story you tell about it. And then when that's over, if you need the story still, take the story. And I think RFM makes a great point. I think it's years of suffering too. I'm not over it. You're still allowed to feel things. RFM, there's been stories where you're like, I am burned about this thing that it's done. And there are
just
things
when you think you're past it, it will pull you back in. This is the beauty of the high demand fundamentalist religion.
Yeah.
And the mind fuck it gives its members for the rest of their lives. Welcome to the club, Matthew.
Yeah.
Nice to have you on board.
it's a shitty club, I'll be honest.
Yes, the losers club.
If this was Methodism, you just would have went home. You just would have, just got in your car, drove home, parked in the driveway,
Turned
and
on the football game and put your feet up and had a beer.
Wow.
made some egg salad, and then you
What a
moved on
life.
with your life. But it's a high demand fundamentalist religion. RFM is right. It's got its hooks in you. It doesn't wash off easy.
They do that on purpose, just so you know.
Yeah.
That might be another thing that will make you angry. But it's important that you be angry because you got to burn through this stuff in order for it to finally get used up.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Have a
You're
great
welcome. Thanks for calling in, Matthew. Have a great weekend, okay? And a great second Saturday. Oh,
Wow.
wait, you can't.
That
can
is-
you? 'Cause
No,
you got a
no,
wife
I'm
and a
out.
kid?
No, yeah, they go by themselves.
Okay. Well, then have a great second Saturday.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And give our best to your wife and kid, too, because, we're all human beings. We're all trying to do our best.
Amen.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
There's that.
Oh, they're on their own. I'm putting them on that ice floe and giving them a push.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, honey. Bye-bye.
And he's
Honey,
he's a better husband and dad for it. So
Mhm.
I say amen. If you make that guy go to something he knows isn't true and is trying to still manipulate him
Mhm.
from an authority position of the pulpit, no, thank you.
Oh, and when you talk about this kind of spiritual manipulation, boy, that comes up over and over again in this episode tomorrow about David Wright and how they try and manipulate him. And it's ridiculous. You look at it and it's like 7th grade manipulation on an adult, for crying out loud. The adult's looking at the 7th grader going, do you really think it's going to work? I mean, do you think I don't see what you're doing right now to try and manipulate me? Okay, so this is a text that I sent to my good friend, Jared Halverson. Remember Jared Halverson? He is a member of the church. I think he's the institute director at the University of Utah. I could be wrong about that. But he has this Unshaken podcast that he does. And basically he's going over, I think, the Come Follow Me course. And so he did one that was sort of about Doctrine and Covenants, a certain section, but he's got this flair for the dramatic. He calls it the ultimate weapon against anti-Mormonism. And it's got a shield there with a sword on it. And it's about 15 minutes long. I've listened to most of it. I'm not sure I got the entire picture, but even before I'd listened to it, I did a screen grab of it. And since I have Jared Halverson's phone number and I text him from time to time, and he sometimes texts back, not this time yet. And I sent that to him and I said, you should come on Mormonism Live to talk about your ultimate weapon. Seriously, it would be great.
It's the ultimate weapon. It obviously defeats all of anti-Mormonism.
Why would you not come on it and come here and use it on us?
Why would you not? Why would you hide your weapon? Why would you hide your talents?
I've got no idea why. It may have been a slightly hyperbolic, but he hasn't gotten back to me yet. I'll let you know if he does. But then I thought, that's only on my personal text with him, and nobody else knows about it except for him and me. And now you.
Now thousands of people.
I thought I would copy and paste the same comment and put it in the comments section of his YouTube video. And that's what the next. There it is. So there's Jared Halverson. He looks very nice in his white shirt and tie and great lighting and nice background. And he says, I say, you should come on Mormonism Live to talk about your ultimate weapon. Seriously, it would be great. See, it's copied and pasted. As of this morning, there had been no comments to that. I'm wondering if anybody can even see it. There weren't even any negative comments to it. I expected at least some boos and hisses from the audience. Not even those.
That ultimate weapon fizzled out pretty quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, and I tried to figure it out, and I couldn't get it. I mean, he's trying to take a nothing section from the Doctrine and Covenants, because you got to hit the uninteresting ones as well as the interesting ones as you go through. And I think he was trying to make something interesting out of it. But he did quote from this part of the Doctrine and Covenants, which I'd even forgotten was there. It's 71 verses 7 through 8. And I want to try and read this because I had forgotten that God actually commands Mormons to debate the anti-Mormons publicly. And I think they're falling down on the job. Here's what it says, okay? This is God speaking. Wherefore, confound your enemies. Call upon them to meet you, both in public and in private. I hope Jacob Hansen is listening to this, as well as Jared Halverson, both in public and in private. And inasmuch as ye are faithful, their shame shall be made manifest. Wherefore, let them bring forth their strong reasons against the Lord. Doctrine and Covenants, section 71, verses 7 through 8. Am I missing something? Because I would think they'd be banging our doors down to get on the show, to use their ultimate weapon against us and follow the Lord's command in the Doctrine and Covenants. What's up? I
don't ever remember that one in Sunday school. They never shared that. They didn't really want us doing that one. Nope.
No. No, that was but I think that the point of his, I'm sorry, Jared. I think the point of his podcast, his lesson, was to take this obvious and direct scripture, which is so clear that anybody can understand what it means, and twist it in a way to make it mean something else.
Yeah, he doesn't have it mean what it does mean, because that's not good for him.
No, it can't mean what it means, because I ain't going there. I ain't going on anybody else's podcast to talk to those anti-Mormons. I've got the ultimate weapon. I could use it against them if I wanted, but I don't want to, because I'm too nice. I'm just too nice a guy. I'm going to keep my ultimate weapon in my pants.
He could have shortened the entire episode and said, my ultimate weapon is...
I think we'd also have to be honest. There may be some of these questions that there is no answer to.
Yes.
Those, I think, would be the ones we avoid.
Those are the ones we'll avoid.
Yes.
And it's not just the questions they don't have answers to. It's the questions for which the rational answer isn't comfortable for them.
And that is what it means. He doesn't mean that we don't have answers to them. What he means is we don't have answers that mean the church is true. All the answers we have to them. The obvious answer is Joseph Smith was out of his mind and this church is not true and not restored by God. That's what the obvious answer is. That's what it means when an apostle or leader of the church or apologist says, well, we don't have answers to that question.
Yeah. They don't want to answer all the questions, and they won't put themselves. These are prophet seers and revelators, and they will not step into forums where open questions, impromptu questions are permitted.
Mm-hmm.
They will do that at the best, will be a controlled environment with the youth only, where questions are pre-chosen beforehand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or the leader gets to select which of the questions they'll answer.
Right. Exactly. It's all kabuki theater. It's all show. There's no substance. But at the same time, they're pretending like it is random. And they give the impression, because they say words to that effect, that these are randomly drawn. Yeah, maybe they were randomly drawn, I don't know, weeks ago, before they went through the rest of the vetting process, and you saw what they were, and it got, your answer got written down, and you were able to bring a notebook, Elder Ballard, that contained a photocopy of an article that you're going to use in one of your answers to this impromptu question session, right?
Mm.
Yeah, that was kind of a tell.
Yeah, that's
not really impromptu.
No. And so once you realize that you belong to a system that doesn't ever really want to answer the tough questions, then you might ask yourself, what would happen if it answered the tough questions? What would happen if it stood in front of honest seekers of truth who ask the questions. And then even the question that's from the honest seeker of truth has to then be turned that person wasn't an honest seeker of truth because they were asking the questions we don't want to answer.
Boy, this is really bringing up tomorrow's show about David P. Wright. I'm sorry. I know that it's coursing through my veins at this point, but this is a common theme in that story as well. He is seeking the truth. And his wife asked the question. One of her letters on his behalf says, why are you punishing my husband for seeking the truth?
Yeah.
That was one line that stood out in an otherwise still standout letter.
Poignant.
Why are you punishing my husband for seeking the truth?
Yeah. I'd highly recommend folks tuning in tomorrow night for Radio Free Mormon. What do we got here with Jacob Hansen?
Well, I feel lucky because I think I just spotted a leprechaun. Doing an Irish jig. No, it's Jacob Hansen. And he says, this changes everything. Now, I have no idea what this is because I haven't watched it. Colby watched it. He's talked to Dan Vogel about it. They're both incensed about the misrepresentations made by Mr. Potato Head in this particular video. You know, every time you see that image of the papyrus with the lacuna, the gaps where Joseph Smith either penciled in or directed the penciling in of the rest of the image, and you look up there and you see that Huck Finn, freckle-faced kid looking square on at the camera as the head of Anubis / the idolatrous priest of Pharaoh who's about to do the filleting on our friend and father Abraham. I can't not see it. Every time I see this, boom, that's right where my eyes go because I love that picture. It's too bad they didn't keep that picture in the final product.
Yeah. Why does Joseph Smith have him facing the camera? And
he's mugging for the camera as he cuts open the entrails of Abraham.
And you can see him going to Reuben headlock and going, hey, look, I did the best I could. I'm shit for an artist. I'm shit for an artist. Could you fix this?
It was at that point they said, okay, you see the head of the guy lying down, Abraham? We're going to use that head. We're just going to flip it over and stick it on that face, okay? So nobody has to see that dumbass face anymore. Except on the thumbnails for Jacob Hansen videos. So he says, this changes everything. The Book of Abraham, new research that proves critics. Okay, I looked at this and I said, I don't know why anybody listens to this guy anymore. He has absolutely no credibility. He has none. No one should believe anything he says. This is the guy who within the last couple of months had a video where he was showing a sheet of writing from the Kirtland Egyptian papers and actually showing it on the camera and saying, look closely. If this were written in Joseph Smith's hand, that would be really damning. But fortunately, it's not. Of course, what was going on behind the scenes is that Colby and Dan, I'll say Colby Reddish, aka the Rando, and Dan Vogel, especially, Dan Vogel looked at it and said, what are you talking about? That is Joseph Smith's handwriting. So Colby and I did an entire episode about that and how he had admitted it would be damning evidence if it were Joseph Smith's handwriting. It turns out to be Joseph Smith's handwriting, which gets published right away by Colby on various forums, right? And what this guy does, what Jacob Hansen does, is nothing. He changes a little bit of his video, but the question is this: what are you going to do now? You have already said that it would be damning if it were in Joseph Smith's handwriting. You're shown that it's in Joseph Smith's handwriting. You acknowledge you were wrong, and then what? You just keep going on your Mormon course as usual? That's really what this is about to you? This is what your search for truth constitutes? Jacob? Yes?
He didn't do nothing.
No.
He used the greatest anti-Mormon
To
weapon.
talk on the plan of salvation.
It'll have to finish that, but,
conference.
so that's not going to cut it. But it's that same question. If we don't like the question, if we don't have a good answer for this, if this question ends up with, if we had to answer it honestly, we couldn't do it. We'd have to lie so hard we'd be caught flat-footed. So those are the questions we ignore.
So Jacob, don't be telling me this changes everything because I don't give a crap what it is you're talking about until you go back and explain how it was that your thought process recognized the fact that the damning evidence really was damning, because even though you didn't think it was Joseph Smith's handwriting when you said it would be damning if it were, it was. So presumably it would still be damning. Wouldn't you think, Jacob? So what I have to see, I'll just speak for myself. What I have to see is that you actually wrestled with this, that you did some major league research or whatever. And if you're going to continue being a Mormon, I know you are, but at least pretend that you're interested in the facts, okay? Try and do that. And while you're at it, by the way, Jacob, we also know that you don't believe what it is you claim to believe. You don't believe the Book of Mormon is true because you are afraid to come on to Mormonism Live and debate Colby Reddish on the truth of that proposition. You are chicken to, because you know that you will get wiped up by Colby Reddish. So I'm just saying, if you don't have the strength of your convictions, you shouldn't be pretending like you do. And I think that's what's at the bottom of this issue, where he'll say it would be damning if it were Joseph Smith's handwriting, but when it turns out it is, he doesn't really care. He's not in this because he believes in it. He's not in it because he really wants to stand up for it. He's got some other motive.
Yeah. Dan Peterson did the same thing. So there were times where somebody asked Dan the question, and the question can't be answered. You've walked the logic out far enough because they stayed around in a Facebook thread long enough, and they won't do this anymore, but years ago, have this sort of debate where they would play back and forth in the comments with you. And they get to a point where you have a chance to then ask the logical question, which they can no longer answer. And Dan Peterson in these moments, Brian Hales in these moments, simply goes, I've got this thing I got to go. I got to disappear. I got a tour to give in Israel.
It's the grown-ups version of my mommy's calling me.
Yeah. But they never return to it. They never come back and actually answer the question.
No.
Mm-mm.
No.
Because
so anyway, that's what religion does. And I'm fine with people having religious beliefs as long as they don't hurt anybody else. Help yourself. I think it's wonderful. I have some strange beliefs myself, I'm sure, that people would think were strange. All I'm saying is you can do that, Jacob, but don't pretend that you're actually based on facts and evidence when it's obviously not the case. If you thought the facts and evidence supported your position, you would be happy to come publicly and debate anybody, including Colby Reddish, on the issue.
It would be a fair way for these guys to engage a conversation that might put them a little bit more on the spot. Would be a little different. Again, that whole thing he's not going to show up for. To have a conversation where the rules are the process by which it takes place is that each side gets to ask a question, any question they want to, and the other side has to answer it about the church, about how one frames their theology, about how one. But then you have to answer the question that's posed to you. And I can't imagine they would want to do that. Imagine if you were allowed to ask your list of the question that paints them into the corner.
Well, that is what a good, moderator is supposed to do, is to come up with questions for both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can see what you're talking about. Yeah.
So there.
Well, I don't think we're going to have to worry about that unless, something drastic happens and I don't know, Jacob gets a personality implant or something.
Yep. We do have a couple calls in the queue, but I want to give you a chance if this is connected to that story or if we want to come back to that after.
Or we can come back to this because this has to do with this and also then with the audio/video that follows.
That'll be great. All right. So caller on the line, give me just a moment.
Please let it be Jacob.
Let's see if you're there. Hi, caller. What's the name?
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. How are things in Bakersfield?
103 degrees.
Sounds like hell.
It is hell.
Why do you live there, Tim?
I was brought here because of a job, and my boss died a couple of years ago. So
you thought you'd hang around?
Pardon?
You thought you would hang around?
Thought I'd hang around. Yeah.
Okay. Well, they got to get people somehow. What's going on tonight, Tim?
Right. Okay. 2 stories. One, my last relationship, my significant other was a court reporter, and she took down all the depositions for Michael Jackson in both lawsuits. And she could not stand to be near Michael Jackson. He gave her the creeps. That was her experience of Michael Jackson. She did not want to be near him at all.
So I'm guessing she didn't tell you word one of what it was that she transcribed.
Oh, she told me a lot of things that she transcribed.
Really? Like what?
She's still alive.
Well, probably. I don't know.
What was the most shocking thing she told you?
Well, the first one that they settled out of court about things that the kids in him did, that he was definitely a pedophile, okay, and he was diddling the kids. And if those transcripts are ever made public, it will ruin his reputation.
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly,
They got a lot of money, Tim. Let's not fuck this up.
I know they got a lot of money. Yes, yes.
They shut people up like you and me.
That's right. They do.
Allegedly.
They do.
So
Allegedly.
you're saying it wasn't just a nuisance lawsuit. There was some serious money that changed hands for that to go away.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, the first one was settled out of court.
Right.
And the second one, he was found not guilty. But
You have a better memory than I. I've
lot,
forgotten about that.
she had done a lot of transcribing, but she said that was the worst. She had done a lot of things, and she had heard a lot of stuff from a lot of different people, really heinous stuff. But she said what she heard from him and other people, she said, was the worst she'd ever heard in all her years of transcribing stuff. She said it was really bad.
Tim, the 80s were weird. The 80s were like your parents didn't think it was altogether wrong that you hung out with the neighbor guy. The neighbor guy wanted the kids to hang out with him.
Yeah.
Like it's a strange thing what the generation behind us, what they sort of were okay with. And now you get to a point where you go, would you let a man, a grown adult man, who, by the way, has undergone a transformation, getting facial surgeries. He's got eccentric thoughts and ideas around lots of different things. And you let your kids stay the night with him, unsupervised. And no one stays with a stranger, man. That doesn't make any sense. And in the 80s, they were like, yeah, it's going to be a fun time at the Neverland Ranch. Let him stay, John. Let him stay.
Well, you know why it is that
Right.
Michael Jackson loves 27-year-olds.
Okay. Punchline.
Not RFM.
What's the punchline, Bill?
No, I'm not going to do it. When they replay this on Ward Radio, when they replay this,
You know what the punchline is, don't you, Tim?
You're going to have to own it.
Come on. Why does Michael Jackson love 27-year-olds? Trevor Larson knows.
No.
Because there's
Trevor Larson knows.
Because there's, look at your screen, because there's
20 of them.
There you go. Now you know.
Not okay.
Oh, not okay.
Tim's the one who's laughing.
Not okay.
Yeah, now you're laughing. I'm the only one who doesn't think this is funny. I'm appalled that you're laughing at that joke.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking about David Chappelle. It's no better, by the way, but David Chappelle is sitting with his audience and he starts talking about Michael Jackson. And the audience is sort of, ooh, one of those moments where he walks them into like, he went too far. And he's like, I don't know what you guys are, half the people in this audience have been molested. But hardly any of you have been molested by Michael Jackson, as if like who it was.
I think I saw that bit.
Audience laughed their ass off, but sometimes I think Chappelle, he has a tendency to say the extreme thing. And when you use jokes, you have to be allowed to play with lines. That's the whole point of humor. So anyway, all right. Thank you, Tim.
And the other one is about David Wright.
Okay.
I knew David Wright.
Oh, you know David Wright.
Yeah, we used to ride the bus to the church archives together occasionally when you do research up there. And I'd go to his office and talk to him. He was the one who showed me how Nibley had mistranslated this one verse where it describes the apostles and Mary, like they're holding her, like that she's praying. It's like she's going to fall apart. Nearly mistranslated this verse, and he showed me what Nibley said it was and what the actual translation was, and how Nibley had misinterpreted things. He says, take a look. That's one of the first times I started to take a look at Nibley. And when I went to check his footnotes when I was reading his stuff, and I go to the library and I find the book and I pull it down and I could see his mark that he left there.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. See, this is what it says here, and this is what you say it is. And he was not straight about a lot of stuff.
You know, Hugh Nibley comes up.
Niblet, by the way.
Yeah, Hugh Nibley comes up in this whole thing too. I mean, it's reversed, but basically he starts by talking about chronologically. He talks about first why it is that he went to BYU, why he wanted to be in Near Eastern Studies.
Right.
I think he got his one of his degrees at University of California at Berkeley. So
Yes.
I know he got one of his degrees there. Anyway, all I'm saying is that he wanted to go into that field because of Hugh Nibley and because he was excited about the field of Near Eastern Studies and the Bible and Hebrew and all that stuff because of Hugh Nibley, because he wanted to do the same thing that Nibley did, which is prove the Book of Mormon true through research. And he thought he could do that like Hugh Nibley. And ultimately, what his research led him to understand, which he says, is that Hugh Nibley was wrong in many instances. I think that's a nice way of putting
And
it.
we were talking about, David and I were talking about this in the 80s, mind you, 83, 84, 85 time frame. He
Mhm.
was already starting to see the cracks, and so was I, starting to see the cracks in the wall. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
How different is that
Yeah.
than Kerry Molstein? When Molstein so if I could ask, if Kerry would take one question, I would ask him, Kerry, you misrepresented the Leiden Papyrus I-384 as Abraham upon his couch. I want you to walk me through the work. Will you show me the work of how you got there? What did you do to decide that that's what it meant? And what have you done once you learned that you were inaccurate about how you got there, that wasn't what it meant? What have you done to help sort of correct that? And I'd love to hear him talk about that.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
Because it's the same thing, right? It's messing it. It's pretending to know something when you don't.
Yeah, and just like that secret weapon that you were talking about, RFM, that guy.
The ultimate weapon.
The ultimate, it's the truth. That's the ultimate weapon. And we know the truth now.
And the truth will set you free. Jesus was right.
He was right, wasn't he?
It's funny because the Mormons use that same scripture, but when they say the truth will set you free, what they really mean is the truth will enslave you. Because in Mormonism, that's what the truth does. It enslaves you. But Jesus, I think, had something else in mind when he said it will set you free.
Of course.
Yeah.
Maybe it will set you free from the slavery that you've been subjected to.
There's an interesting thought. Yes, it could. It could. And I just want to tell Matthew, I've been out for 24 years and I'm still deconstructing. So
Amen.
It's a lifelong process. It's a lifelong process. And I get more every day when I find out more shit about what they're doing, the church, it just pisses me off more. You know, and so
it is a process.
It's a process. It's a process. Well, I was pretty much done with it until you guys started to do your Wednesday night show, and I started to listen, and I thought, maybe I'll get back into this, and this is where it's led. So
there's something cathartic, isn't there, about sitting around with people who have gone through the journey of deconstructing it and going over the data points to sort of reinforce, like, we weren't crazy. This thing was so fucked up and it hurt us on so many different ways.
Oh yeah,
it's cathartic.
It totally messed up all our lives.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, like when Lila was on the other night talking with Natasha, from the time you're baptized, I went, oh my God, she's so right. And
Yeah. The temple's in my backyard, and the missionaries knocked on my door the other day. They
He's
still
speaking literally right now. Well, not literally in his backyard, but close enough to huck a rock at.
Yeah. This thing puts itself in your space without your consent. The very least you get to do is to shine a light and speak your truth about what it did to you, and to be a warning voice to those in your family who are still in, to whatever degree you want to.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but there is this great scene that David Wright talks about where he's meeting one of these endless series of meetings with either his bishop or his stake president, which is sucking the life out of him. And he finally decides that, hey, I'm going to try something new. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and teach them something so they'll learn something that they didn't know before they had the meeting, sort of like the teacher mode, right? And he just decides he's going to go off on the entire Book of Abraham thing. And I'm just imagining what this bishop and stake, their minds must be exploding as he's telling them all of this stuff that they've got no clue about because they never studied. And here he is telling them all this stuff. I have no idea what they would have done with it, but apparently they didn't leave the church over it because they stayed in at least long enough to excommunicate David.
Yeah. Well, we were in the church archives one time, and David was looking at the manuscript for the Book of Abraham and the Pearl of Great Price, and he found the haplography. That's where you repeat a line twice.
Yes.
He says, "Hey, Tim, I got to show you something." I go over and I go, "Oh my goodness, look at this! Wow!" So, all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah.
Those were the days, huh?
Those were the days. Those were the fun days. We were digging deep and having fun.
Yeah. I guess Bakersfield makes even Provo look good.
Yeah.
No.
Boy, that was a slow rollout, but I'm glad it finally landed.
Last time I drove through Provo in 16, I think it was, I couldn't believe how big it had grown. I said, there's no way I could ever live here. It's just too many people, too much going on. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Richard Holmes here, okay? So we're going to dump you, and you can watch from home, all right?
Have a great night, Tim.
Dump me. Oh, no,
Yeah.
you two guys. Take care.
Take it easy.
Good night.
Bye-bye. All right.
Yeah, so I want to talk about Richard Holmes because Richard Holmes is like this craziest cat I've ever met. And he came up, I mean, he called into the show. He actually called into the show last Wednesday. I hope everybody was watching. If not, we've got the clip coming up. But this is from the show last week on Mormonism Live with Ganesh. And I had noticed that Richard Holmes had made a comment there in the live chat. Apparently he was active in the live chat this past Wednesday with Lila on the show and Lindsay. So Richard Holmes says, to Bald Eagle, am I expected to believe Smith just invented the moment of great alarm in the grove of trees? Now, I don't know what this is responding to. Obviously to someone named Bald Eagle. But it says, it just struck me as the funniest comment that, except for the fact that I know Richard Holmes is a devout believer, it violates Poe's law because he writes in such a way as it makes it sound like satire. Richard Holmes says, am I expected to believe Joseph Smith just invented the moment of great alarm in the grove of trees? In other words, no human being could invent such a fantastic tale. Am I supposed to just think he invented it? Well, yeah, that's what you're supposed to think. If it didn't happen, he probably invented it. And him inventing it is probably a hell of a lot more likely than it actually happening. So yeah, you could suppose that and not be unrational, Richard. But there's Richard Holmes, and he shows up. Remember, it's like he lives to populate people's live chats. It's not just here, it's everywhere. It's probably Newsweek. He probably stops strangers on the street and talks to them about the virtues of his prophet, Paul Gregerson. Now, there's some suspicion that these are actually the same people and that he just suffers from multiple personality disorder. But Richard Holmes purports to always be talking about the research done by this guy, Paul Gregerson. And what Richard Holmes does is he runs around and talks about how great Paul Gregerson is about the subject of Egyptology and the subject of the Book of Abraham. And the whole thing is it's always the same thing. This guy is a one-trick pony if ever there was one. And it's about the fact that his prophet, Paul Gregerson, has found some kind of crazy-ass way to say that Joseph Smith actually did translate the Egyptian correctly. Now, in spite of the fact that every Egyptologist in the world who's ever looked at it, Mormon and non-Mormon, disagrees and says, no, he didn't translate the Egyptian correctly. His translation has nothing to do with the Egyptian that's on the scrolls. That's why we had to come up with all these crazy theories in the first place. The missing scroll theory, the catalyst theory, right? We have the little orphan Annie decoder ring theory. We have to come up with all these theories precisely because Joseph Smith does not translate the Egyptian correctly into English. I mean, it's not like it's even close. It's just crazy. So this is what Richard Holmes lives for. And he was active in the live chat Wednesday, and then he called in. So this is 3 minutes of Richard Holmes and me kind of busting his chops because I already know who he is. When he calls in, it may have surprised some people at how dismissive I was to this character who had just called into the show, if you did not already know, as I did, who he is and what he's going to say.
Does Gregerson ever defend his theory, or is Richard Holmes always the mouthpiece? Is he the Sidney Rigdon of the Joseph Smith Rigdon, of that group?
I think he's the Bruce Wayne of the Bruce Wayne Batman thing.
Okay, well, yeah, we know
I
that.
don't think they've ever been seen in the same room together.
No, that would be interesting. Sort of like Kwaku and Dave Schmidt. They've never been seen in the same room together either.
Yes.
Here it is.
So here it is. And now if you listen to what I say, hopefully this will make more sense and you won't think so badly of me.
I can barely hear you. It sounds like you're right up against the mic or your phone.
Hold on, let me get in the quieter place.
Yeah, this is Richard. He hasn't identified himself yet.
What's the name?
Let's see. Hold on. Let me try to get back to my
That's
phone.
pretty good. That's pretty good. What's the name?
My name is Richard Holmes.
Okay. What's the question, Richard?
Oh no, not Richard Holmes. God help us. Jesus Christ, Richard. What are you calling about, my friend?
What's your question?
I want to know why people are trying to say that Joseph Smith mistranslated the Pili characters when he never did.
The Pili?
Because he did. He mistranslated them horribly, as any Egyptologist knows, whether arrogant or otherwise. Richard, come on, get with the program. Wake up.
Richard, the topic tonight is what it is, and you're calling it about something completely different, which shows that you have no wherewithal at all.
No, you don't, because hear me out. You're all comparing the facsimiles.
And Moses supposes his toes are roses.
Why is it okay?
That's hilarious.
Why are you on the phone talking about facsimiles right now?
Yeah.
He's not anymore, is he? He's gone, right?
No,
he went bye-bye.
Yeah, he went bye-bye immediately.
Yeah, Richard Holmes is this guy. He's like the one acolyte of this other guy who came up with this crazy-ass way of saying all the Egyptologists in the world are wrong.
All of them. Every one of them.
All the Egyptologists say that Joseph Smith really wasn't translating Egyptian.
Including Mormon apologists.
Yeah, they're all wrong. Because this one guy who's not an Egyptologist, who may or may not even exist. All I've ever seen is his acolyte go around and talking about the wonders of this other person. And I can't remember who is it Gregson or something? Paul Gregson, wasn't it? Paul Gregson. Thank you. Paul Gregerson. He's supposed to be this whiz or something who is not an Egyptologist, but he knows more than all the Egyptologists in the world combined. And so this guy runs around saying, oh my gosh, Paul Gregerson, he's so amazing. And why do the arrogant Egyptologists not, deal with this crazy guy, Paul Gregerson? And I mean that in a non-liability kind of way.
There's one guy in the world who says a thing and then you adopt it and everyone else says it's wrong and you think you're the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
But that's part of the psychology.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the psychology of being on the inside of the secret and thereby gaining specialness that those outside of the secret don't have. And it's what makes conspiracy theories work.
Yes.
It's what makes a lot of things work. What makes fundamentalist religions work.
That's how Mormonism got started, was a guy like that.
Yeah.
Who refused to listen to logic or reason and continued to say God was speaking to him and don't worry about how insane it is. Just believe me. An angel appeared to me with a drawn sword, so you need to do what I say.
Sorry, this cracks me up by Marzipan. I made up a person so I could use a quote for myself in a high school psychology paper. I hope that was abnormal psychology.
Apples.
That's
and
a great idea. So there he was, Richard Holmes in all his glory. Not perhaps Sherlock's smarter brother.
He not only needs the critical Egyptologist to be wrong, he also requires the believing Egyptologist apologist to be wrong. He doesn't agree with John Gee's theories. He thinks John Gee is wrong. He thinks Carrie Molstein is wrong. He thinks Robert Rittner and everyone on that side of the aisle is wrong.
Mhm.
Because he has a cool theory that if you close one eye and you squint, it looks like a bullseye.
Well, he certainly doesn't lack for chutzpah as well as multiple personalities, perhaps. But
Yeah.
I see Conky's here. Did you see Conky's here?
Dude, let's bring Conky on.
Conky!
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. So nice to actually meet you guys. I've been in the chat for forever with an ambiguously gendered name, and I think I've been assumed to be some middle-aged man for a long time. So,
Why Conky?
Pee-wee was my favorite TV show growing up, and
You show
so
good
I'm
taste.
Conky the robot, but also at the same time a throwback to one of the more fascinating characters in Mormon history, Bruce R. McConkie. So,
I love how you tied Mormonism and Pee Wee Herman together.
yeah, they're my favorite things.
I love Pee-wee. I didn't watch his Saturday morning show. I think I was busy doing something else. It
Oh.
might have been sleeping in. I don't know. But I love the movie. Funniest movie ever made. Tim Burton actually made a
Oh.
good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tim Rathbone, for making that. That was a beautiful movie.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes. Tim Rathbone, a man of many talents.
I want to share with you the craziest experience I had watching Mormon Stories podcast the other day. Do you remember back in April, Laurel Hell called into the call-in studio because her brother-in-law, Justin, did the Who Killed Joseph Smith podcast or episode.
Justin Griffith.
Yeah,
Justin
right.
Griffith, yeah.
So she spoke on Mormon Stories podcast. She just did an interview last week, or I guess she did it in June, but they released it a few days ago. And her bio thing was my dad was a polygamous bishop.
Yes, I saw that.
It's such a rare thing to have in your background because my dad actually was also a secret polygamist. And we continued going to the mainstream Mormon church growing up. And I thought, well, that would be a really interesting one to listen to. I wonder if we have any like mutual experience. What I did not expect was, as I'm listening to the beginning part, she's talking about how she's raised in California, and I go, oh yeah, me too. And this specific part of California, and I go, oh wow, me too. Her plague bishop was my plague dad's plague bishop. So both her dad and my dad both went polygamist in 1998 in a tiny ward in Los Gatos, California. And so I tracked her down through her email address, and I was like, did your dad give my dad the green light to practice the principle? And she said that is very possible. So we apparently went to girls' camp together, not knowing that our dad also was a secret polygamist, and we were polygamous kids in this like small town outside of San Jose, California. So I know her family. I go, oh yeah, did you know my cousin? She was your age. And oh yeah. And it's blown my mind that like my very niche, weird experience of growing up in polygamy, but also in the mainstream church may have had, it was like, there was something in the water, I guess, in our ward.
Who was your dad's authority in arriving at that decision? In other words, was there somebody that he considered a higher priesthood authority? Did he just receive a revelation for himself that he needed to do this thing? Was he and that bishop and, you know, whatever, a handful of other members of the church that do things this way, sort of moving from ward to ward? Or
At that time, he talked about it being personal revelation and that the church may have been in some kind of apostasy. My mom was not down with it. And so when he decided that he wanted to live the principle, they ended up splitting up and he kind of added wives at his house. And my mom was in the mainstream church. So he stopped going to church and stopped attending. But apparently so did Laurel Hell's bishop dad. And so I don't know if they both got the green light from God independently and knew of each other. My dad died 10 years ago, so I can't ask him. But Laurel says that she'll ask her dad if they ever spoke about it back then. But it was just the most bizarre experience. And I was hoping that she would have more of a positive experience because I loved it. Like, I thought that it was fantastic at my dad's house living under polygamy. I thought it was the greatest. And I actually ended up still practicing the principle all the way until about 1.5 years ago. And so I had this
When you
positive.
say still practicing, are you talking about being married to a man who was already married to another woman?
No, I got like this weird Saturday's Warrior-esque type of personal revelation at 14 that I had met my husband and that we were going to get married and have 2 kids. And we ended up doing exactly that. But when I turned 18, I decided that I wanted to live the principle, and he was down with that. And so we spent almost 25 years of our relationship where I was monogamous with him, but he had multiple women partners, and we kind of raised our family that way.
But he wasn't married to them?
Well, no,
in
he's
some
only
kind of
married to me.
ritual, obviously not under the law. It wouldn't be permitted.
Yeah. He would consider most of them girlfriends. He had one that was committed, wanted to be a plural wife, and I was so stoked. And we were really excited about it, but she ended up deciding that she wanted to be the only. And so that's how I got a divorce 2 years ago. So I'm like 40 for the first time being single since I was like 14 years old.
What are you doing with your newfound freedom?
I'm going to law school, of course.
Oh,
Look at that.
well,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in Texas going to law school, and
Where in Texas?
Austin.
Hook 'em horns.
Right now I'm commuting not to UT, but I'm hoping to transfer to UT soon. So maybe I'll graduate with a UT degree, but I don't go to UT yet.
Where do you go right now? If you don't mind saying.
South Texas.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
I'm in
This
the
is
J. Reuben
amazing.
Clark Law Society, and I have a calling in the mainstream church. Now that I'm not living polygamously, I can actually like participate at church more openly. So I've got a calling there, and I'm back in the mainstream church, but also
Did you have to
listening
get excommunicated first? I've
No,
heard stories that people participating in polygamy who repent and want to go back to the church, it's usually the woman, at least as I've heard, who wants to go back to the church says you can't just come back. You have to get excommunicated first and work your way back in and then be rebaptized. That's not your experience?
not in my experience. Nope. They let me back in very happily. Well, I mean, didn't let me back in. I came clean that we had been living in that kind of life. We were still going to ward activities, and our kids went to like primary and activity nights in Young Women's. And so now I'm just like participating more fully, I guess.
Yeah, it
So-
sounds like the relationship from your side and your ex's side was consensual. I don't have a problem with people making choices about lifestyle things so long as everyone involved isn't being religiously coerced. And it sounds like you guys all just made a adult informed decision to live your life that way.
So I
Yeah.
got to preface this. I have to preface this by saying this is not a proposal, okay, Conky?
Okay.
But does this mean that you're still open to living the principle?
Ideally, yeah, that would be ideal. It's difficult to find someone that is interested in that's not just in it to bang lots of women. Like, it's hard to find someone that's like truly invested in that kind of relationship. But ideally, yeah, that's where I would go.
Interesting. Well, that's a cool story. That's a journey that I haven't heard a whole lot. So that's really cool that you've wound your way through life doing things a little differently.
Yeah, and thanks for being open enough to share that with us and thousands of other people.
Great. Well, I hope to see you guys at Sunstone this year. I'm gonna
Oh yeah.
I'll be headed there.
Well, we should be there, God willing.
Cool.
Say hi to everybody at church.
I do, and you know what's funny is that
What?
in when we're in Sunday school sometimes, there are a couple people that will share things that I know they heard on Mormon Sunday School with RFM. I go, one line when you said it, you know, in the Bible, it's it's precept upon precept, line upon line, and had the same insight that you had the week prior on Mormon Sunday School. And I pulled him over afterwards. I was like, do you listen to the same podcast that I listen to? And he goes, well, not officially, but are you talking about what I think you're talking about? So there are people in the
I'm a
ward.
name that can't be mentioned.
Yeah, you're Voldemort. Absolutely.
happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are mentioned. It's fun to spot other listeners of Mormon discussions for sure.
Yeah.
Well, how wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you too.
Cool. Thanks. Bye guys.
Great day.
Good night.
Night.
Well, that was nice, wasn't it?
That was cool.
Hearing from Coni, an unusual story. I'm glad you shared it with us. Oh, yeah, here's a few things that were made. This was when Ganesh was on as well. Once again, I tell you, I go home after the show and I go through the live chat because I don't watch it during the show. I do a little bit more on this show because of the format of the show, but generally I don't at all. And so I'm seeing it for the first time. And someone with an interesting name called Mindful LDS Christian Living and Apologetics. That's actually the entire name. Probably got like, a cramp just writing it out. But they said something about you. And what they said was Mormon discussions. I guess it's about both of us. Mormon discussions, false teachers full of lies and deceptions and priestcrafts who con people out of money. I thought that was kind of judgmental.
A little
But
bit.
then to make sure that they're not talking about me later on, the same person, Mindful LDS Christian Living and Apologetics, said, watch Bill Reel lie and deceive. Look closely. Watch Bill Reel lie and deceive. So apparently his beef her beef is mostly with you, Bill, not with me.
I'd love to know what it is I said that was a lie. I can put you in touch with James. You can start with his list, see if you can get through those ones. But I'm happy to account for anything that you think I lied on and to explain how I came to that conclusion or that perception. So there's that.
I know. Lie, Bill, lie. See, Bill, lie.
Well,
Oh, and then here's another one. I just took a few because I take screen grabs of these. I got my phone hopelessly jammed with millions of these screen grabs, but at least these are from the last couple of weeks. So they're somewhat recent. Hopefully I can remember what they're talking about. Tyson Hadfield had said, thumbnail reminds me of a Mark Norman joke. This is where we had Kwaku pulling the rabbit out of the hat on the thumbnail, Bill. Thumbnail reminds me of a Mark Norman joke talking about religion versus magic. A magician pulls a rabbit out of a hat. You don't see it. He tells you got to believe there's a rabbit. You say you still don't see it, and they tell you you're going to hell.
that's it. You got 2 chances. No soup for you.
Right. I mean, what kind of magic trick is that? It rapidly becomes kind of coercive and abusive. Abusive magic. Hey, that would be a new thing for me to do. That'd be a great act.
It's a great
And,
podcast title too. Abusive.
In Las Vegas. Yeah, abusive magic. So this one, Joey Smith says, taking a step back, we're discussing a religion that says, don't change the underwear we sell you or the magic doesn't work.
Right.
Kind of like that. It was like a 20,000, 30,000 foot view of the church. That's basically what it is that they're saying. You're right. Just looked at from a different perspective. Here's one from Colby Reddish, some rando. Oh, this is when the Trib was reporting about how much the church is growing. And he takes issue with their journalistic ethics and says, Trib really coming through with journalistic integrity on this one by relying exclusively on the word of the church to favorably report on itself.
Yeah,
That Rando has quite a way with words, doesn't he?
he does, and he makes a great point. Like, they're not the what do they call it? The objector, the unbiased objector. You know, the person who's down the middle.
Observer, objective observer.
Yeah. And they're not that. They pretend to be the other team in town when they're like a ref who gets paid to throw a few calls their way.
They're like the Washington Generals.
Not everything. You can say a few things, but don't say those things, and be sure to say these things.
By the way, I could be misremembering that, but I think the Washington Generals was the name of the team that traveled around with the Harlem Globetrotters to lose to them every night.
Yeah.
In other words, they were in the tank with the show too.
And they played pretty good basketball as well, but strangely, they always lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's another one, and this is a newscast. I see Rebecca there on the top of the screen. Q Source says, oh, this one really struck me. Q Source says, we have audited our finances and find everything is in order, ... for 20 years of fraud.
Yeah. Never going to hear that.
Every time you see that little marionette come up and give the report on the finances of the church and that everything's in order, remember that same or a remarkably similar looking marionette got up every freaking 6 months and told you the same thing when we now know the church was engaged in fraud. Their words are meaningless. They have no credibility. Great point. Great way to put it, Q Source. Oh, did you have any thoughts about that, Bill?
Just that the guys you pay to defend you are the ones responsible for telling everyone whether you were honest, and they go along with the grift. They go along with it. There isn't an honest voice in that group. Someone's not going to stand up and tell you the truth about the audit.
They were lying to you. That's the basic bottom line of this. For 20 years, they were lying to you. We know they were lying to you. We just don't know all the other times they're lying to you because we haven't found that evidence yet.
Well, we found a lot of them.
Oh,
just
yeah.
not the ones we haven't found.
If somebody lies to you for 20 years, I think you're not obligated to continue to take their word for shit. Just saying.
Yeah.
Here's another one. This is from Trevor Larson. It's at the bottom of the screen here. This was that wall of text. And I think this is me talking about Oliver Cowdery identifying something, a figure on the Book of the Dead, the Scroll of Joseph, right? With something in the Book of Josephus. Anyway, I think that's what that is. But what Trevor Larson is saying is, I think it's more likely that God did it than that Joe heard about a book that was around in his time and place. I think that was well put by Trevor Larson. A nice little bit of sarcasm there. I think it's more likely that God did it than that Joe heard about a book that was around in his time and place. Perfectly put, chef's kiss, because that's what the apologist has to say.
The other thing by Richard Holmes seemed more sarcastic. His statement, if we go back.
I know, and he was being completely sincere. They're both masters of their craft.
Am I expected to believe that Smith just invented a moment of great alarm in a grove of trees? Duh. So
that is Richard Holmes in a nutshell. DUH.
There it
okay,
is.
so this is no Molly sphere. Hang on a second here. I got to see.
Go back, yeah.
No, that was Dan Vogel. Hang on, we got so many.
We went way too far.
Look, we did. Yes, we did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay, that was Q Source. Okay, and now this is who's that? Trevor Larson. Oh, right. I think it's okay. We did that one. So let's go to the next one. Benjamin Gardia says, I'm often blown away by the genius of some in the XMO community. I have an advanced graduate degree and feel like an absolute moron sometimes compared to some of you. Now, the question is whether he's being sarcastic.
Yeah, who knows? On a
I
night
took it as being sincere, and I thought it was a great compliment. So I wanted to preserve that. And thank you, Benjamin. If you weren't being sincere, I'm going to choose to believe that you are. Now, from Dan Vogel, some upstart from Ohio, I think, Dan Vogel. I've heard the name before once or twice.
He's a researcher.
Yes, he is. He's a researcher writer. Dan Vogel says, I think RFM might be right that Joseph Smith's modalism was unintentional. That was when I was talking about the Trinitarian in the Book of Mormon, and it's actually modalism. But I think Joseph Smith is just trying to be Trinitarian, but he's screwing it up because virtually everybody who does this in an informal way goofs it up and actually they're trying to describe Trinitarianism, but they end up describing modalism, which was declared to be a heresy. Okay. They're so similar that you got to be an expert on the subject to know the difference, really. Okay. But the modalism part is basically there's one God, but they manifest themselves in three different ways: Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Steam, water, ice. 3 ice cream balls, right, on the ice cream cone. You've heard these descriptions before. Those are all heresies. That's not the Trinity. Okay. God is not, he can't manifest as steam. He can't manifest as water. He can't manifest as ice because he's all three at the same time. That's the whole point of the Trinity. But I have heard pastors of religions who presumably went to school, some to get their degrees. And this would be more Baptist kind of, and I don't mean to be derogatory about that, but I'm saying they didn't go to the seminaries that the other churches, such as Catholics or other Protestant churches, might go to, long established Protestant churches. But I've heard them describe the Trinity as modalism. So all I'm saying is I think that Joseph Smith was probably trying to describe the Trinity, but he was actually getting it wrong, and he was doing modalism like happens a lot. The only reason this is of any importance, by the way, is because it's very common for critics of the Book of Mormon to talk about the Book of Mormon and say it's Trinitarianism in the Book of Mormon. Because, yeah, it looks like Trinitarianism too. They're very similar, right? But the apologetic response, and I've heard Daniel C. Peterson do this, is to say sniffily, well, it's not the Trinity, it's modalism, as if it makes a dime's worth of difference to the discussion. It's a distraction. But that's why the distraction is there. That's why this point is something that I even bring up. And I'm very cheered to know that Dan Vogel, at least provisionally, agrees with me.
I think it's interesting. Again, Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like Dan's sort of arriving at that point as the conversation's happening.
He was probably way ahead of me on this, as on everything else.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe you'd get one in because he does get a lot of them.
He's amazing. Well, he eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff. He's amazing.
Yeah. And
I just eat and breathe it. I don't sleep it.
I hope people know I was joking about the researcher thing, since that's what apologists often refer to as a term to define them. When I think Dan Vogel, I put him and D. Michael Quinn right up there at 1 and 2 for the depth of research that they've done on Mormonism.
Yeah. Amazing they are. No Molly Sphere. This is after we'd shown a picture of Sherry Dew, a recent picture of Sherry Dew, a not terribly flattering picture of Sherry Dew, where No Molly Sphere says, karma has a way of stamping your evil on your face in old age. Unless she was talking about me. Maybe she's talking about me. I was just thinking she was talking about, Sherry Dew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sherry Dew has a painting in the closet, and it looks even worse. Now, Sherry, Cheri, or Cherry, I'm not sure how to pronounce, says, I used to be a groundskeeper at the temple. We named our lawnmowers. I suggested our new mower's name be Mower Ancomer. That was just a bit random there. I can't remember exactly what we're talking about that generated that thought, but I thought it was kind of funny. And that's it. That's all that I have there. And we're at 1:23. Is there anybody else on the lines, Bill?
There's no one else on the phone lines, but it might be good to spend a few minutes announcing some of the things that are coming up.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Please, everybody pay attention.
All right. So folks, first off, we'd love to have you on the mailing list. And so I'll put that link into the live chat, but about a third of you are not subscribed to the channel. And it would be a huge favor to us, to RFM and myself, if you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so that you get a notification, you don't miss any of our episodes. But there's the mailing list. And I'll just note too, August 2nd, RFM and I are gathering in Salt Lake City. We'll be there for Sunstone. I present on Friday, RFM on Saturday. And then Saturday night from 5 to 10 p.m., we're going to be having an event in downtown Salt Lake City. And we'd love for folks to come to that. There's maybe a little over 40 tickets sold at this point, so there's less than 20 left. And so if folks do want to grab a ticket for that, suggest you doing that right away.
And that's 3 weeks from tonight, right, Bill?
That is 3 weeks from tonight. Yes, it is.
No,
And
tomorrow night.
Saturday. So yes, tomorrow night. 3 weeks from
3
tomorrow.
weeks from tomorrow night.
And also 2 days later on Monday night, we'll be doing a live show of the Mormon Newscast, a live studio audience. And about 15 tickets are sold for that. So there's still another 35 tickets or so to go. And folks, we'd love for you to be there for the live showing of the Mormon Newscast. So please register for that as well if you want to do that. And we're going to have a great time. Come to Sunstone. Lindsay was just on the last episode of Mormonism Live to talk about that. She dished a little juice in that episode. Anything you want to say there?
Oh, yeah. Michelle Stone is saying, spank you very much.
Lindsay was trying to put down the rumor that they had denied any polygamy deniers from giving doing a session at Sunstone, but that somehow that group was, according to her or somebody, was spreading rumors that they had denied them being able to talk on that subject. And she said, no subject is forbidden. Anybody can talk on anything. There are certain processes you have to go through to submit that talk.
Yes, and I've gone through them.
Yeah, pretty easy. So
if I could do it, it's by definition easy.
Here, got it. They nailed it. So whatever you hear, that she said, don't believe it, and come to Sunstone. It should be a fun time. Thursday night, John Turner gives the opening talk, and that's free to everybody. So if you want to hear just an incredible talk on the life of Joseph Smith from the objector thing again. What did you say it was?
The objective observer?
Yes.
He's a non-Mormon. He's a scholar.
Yes.
He's a historian.
He looks from the sidelines. And
he also doesn't think Joseph practiced polygamy.
No, that's not true.
No, I'm sorry. I'm kidding. He was asked that question, and he does believe that it's obvious from the historical record that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy. He is the last or the latest in a long line of historians who all come to the same conclusion: Joseph Smith practiced polygamy. There is no historian who says that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy.
Yeah. Yep. And then the last thing I'll just say too is if you can't make it, but you want to pay for someone else to be able to make it, we do have a campaign that is taking in scholarships for people. And we've already had 2 people reach out to us that would appreciate that help. And so if you want to pay for someone else to be able to attend one of these events, either the show with RFM and I, or the live Mormon newscast, which will also include Rebecca Biblioteca, the great from over at Mormonish.
Yeah.
And we should have a ton of fun. Anything, RFM, you want to say about any of that?
You already talked about Monday?
Yep, Monday, the 2nd.
On August 4th?
Yeah.
Because they're 2 different things.
Sorry, I did just that just now. So I did put the link in for that. Monday, August 4th for the newscast, and the one before I put in as well, August 2nd on Saturday night.
Yeah, because on Monday evening, we'll actually be doing a live newscast from the theater where we'll be having this meeting. So that should be a lot of fun. We won't be doing a similar thing on Saturday. That'll be more just talking and more personal kind of stuff. No doing a podcast while we're doing it.
Yeah. And otherwise, we'll have another week's worth of shows. RFM tomorrow night. What time are you thinking that'll release? Because it's so long. Are you wanting to try maybe 5 or 6?
It's so long. I was tempted to break it in 2, but then I thought, well, nobody will listen to the second half. No, I kept it all together. And, that's just the way I roll. I don't make it into 5 episodes. I could probably do that to increase the number of episodes I put out, at least numerically. But no, it's all going to be one episode. It's all one story. And like I said, it's a story that deserves to be told. It's a story that needs to not be forgotten. And we only remember things through repeated telling of it. And sometimes in a ritualized setting, like Radio Free Mormon podcast on Saturday night. No longer the loneliest night of the week, by the way.
Yeah. And I'll just say thank you, folks. Somebody said, what a great show. We'd love to know what you thought about tonight's show. We'd appreciate your feedback in the live chat or in the comments down below. And then lastly, this show survives on the donations of you, the listener, the viewer. And I did just put that link into the chat as well at donorbox.org/Mormonism-after-dark. And so you can send us $5 or $10 a month, help us keep the show going, and we'll keep bantering with you every Friday night. So we appreciate you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I have a great time Friday night. I look forward to it. The weeks go by so fast. I will tell you, Sunday is basically the only day I have off, and I try not to get involved, sometimes successfully. I try not to get involved in the planning and preparation for the following Monday night's newscast. But I tell you, from Monday morning and getting ready for the newscast, and then it just snowballs into getting ready for this show and getting ready for, Mormonism Live show, and then getting ready for this show because we still get ready for it. And also planning, preparing, and executing a new Radio Free Mormon show that then goes up and premieres on Saturday night. These weeks fly by, and I've never had a better time in my entire life.
There you go. Amen to that. So, folks, good night. Have a great night. Thanks so much for all you guys do and for joining us here at Mormonism After Dark. Good night, everybody.
Thanks.